All right. Hello, people. Welcome back to Light Roast. Um, I I don't know. This one's gonna be or not. We'll see. But we're gonna jump in. I'm gonna start talking about this person, which I think her story is a little bit like well known, so I'll just tell you who it is. And then again, it's just a quick brief overview because then the rest is kind of going off of like her experience and stuff.
Mhm.
But and I might not do it justice, but it's okay because I'm gonna be going off on a tangent a little bit. So I'm gonna be talking about Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, yeah.
Um, so Oprah Winfrey was born in January 29, 1954 in Mississippi. And her name was actually supposed to be Orpha from the Bible.
Mhm.
But because of the like spelling and like mispronunciation and all of that, like in the mix up of her birth, um, it turned into Oprah, right? Um, Now her parents separated when she was very young, and her maternal grandmother took care of her. And then after, and this I didn't know, after first grade, they actually skipped her to third grade. Uh,
Oh.
and so it was because her grandmother had taught her how to read early when she was,
Mhm.
I think. And so when she was 6 years old, she got sent to live with her mother, who lived in like a very ghetto and like dangerous neighborhood. And she lived with her mother and her two half brothers. When she was 12, then she was sent to live with her father, who lived in Nashville. Um, and it was during that time when she lived with her dad where she kind of came to the realization that she wanted to get paid to talk. Like that's
Uh-huh.
what she wanted to do. But then she got called back to move with her mom, which again, that kind of lifestyle was a lot more dangerous in comparison to where she lived with her dad. And so during that time, it was like her teen years had a lot of negative effects because she had repeated sexual abuse when she was 9, starting when she was 9. And that was actually by like trusted men in the family, like
Mm.
family friends. And so her mom had a lot of like odd jobs, which made it really hard for her mom to actually care for her or like to have that like, I guess, mother supervision. Um, and so then she moved back with her dad, and she, her dad was very strict, so that kind of was maybe like a blessing in disguise because she became like she was an extremely excellent student. um I think I read that she wasn't allowed to have dinner until she was able to like memorize 5 new vocabulary words every night.
Oh.
So it was, yeah, it was very intense. But she was an excellent student. She was in a lot of clubs. She had a lot of recognition. And so I kind of just am focusing on kind of like that background because obviously, as we know today, she's very successful.
Yeah.
She had her show that went on from 1986 to 2011. And then from after having her own talk show, she now has her own television network, right?
Yeah.
And so she's known to be the first Black female billionaire, and having her own talk show and all of that. And so she's very famous and I think she's come out with a book. I know she has like a book club.
Mhm.
um and so and she's also like affiliated with like Weight Watchers. And so she's like really into that whole like weight loss journey and transformation and all of that.
Yeah.
I know she also has like some political platform as well, right? She's very open about that. So she's had like a great success story now, which is the reason why I'm focusing on her childhood is because it's important to know that sometimes it's easy to see somebody's success and assume that maybe that came easy or maybe
Mm.
that was a given or this person was lucky. But if you really
Yeah.
go back and like read into like her success, like she started off in like I think in the radio, and then she moved from there, and she had to compete for a job to be able to like air in a talk show. And so obviously like everything that built up to where she is now was not something that you're like, oh, she came from a rich home and everything was handed to her, you know. It came through a lot of like struggle, and
Mm.
obviously that um you kind of have to deal with, especially like during adulthood. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, like you have to go through all of those emotions and kind of figure out where you're at. But the reason why I decided to go with her and bring her up in this episode was because I read one of her quotes, and I think that was something that I really wanted or had been on my mind to kind of target, and that it's
Mhm.
extremely important with what we're going on in the world today, or just several of the things that are going on in the world today. And her quote is, surround yourself with only people who are going to lift you higher. And so
Yeah.
in this episode, I could really want to talk about kind of just like the people you surround yourself with.
Mhm.
um Obviously before there was a bigger impact on having like that physical surrounding, you know. But now, especially with us, everyone being virtual and being at home and trying to stay in touch, it's more of a virtual or emotional like surrounding of who you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah.
um and so I think it's extremely important to bring up now, because um everyone goes through their own journey, right? Some could be considered worse than others, some could be just, we all live life differently, and our perspective of what life is like is different. But it's so important to, whatever journey you're going through, is to surround yourself with people who have your best interests in mind. And I know at a young age it's kind of hard to be able to say I want you in my life and I don't want you in my life, right? Because and that's kind of difficult to do. And we kind of talked about this in our last episode where, you know, we
Yeah.
awkward years, and how even then it was kind of hard to just decide and say, oh, this is not the kind of influence I want, you know.
Mhm.
but but then you get to an age where you have a say, and you can decide who your bubble is going to be, and who your community is going
Mhm.
to be, and who you want to let in, right?
Yeah.
And that is such a tricky thing, because I think relationships is one thing, right? Because we talk about like that's your potential spouse or whatever. But I think friendships can be even trickier, because
Mm.
you're not like committing yourself to this person. You know, it's not like a, oh, I'm choosing you, like that one person. This is like, you can have multiple close friends. And I think those are super hard to kind of like friend break up with, right? Because
Yeah.
it's it's just, I think it's just, it's trickier, right? Because it's not
Mhm.
like this like it's just, it's more different, because there's this understanding that you're not like, oh, I'm not like emotionally in love with you, kind of like one-on-one. There's this,
Yeah.
you know, there's something you build up. And friendships are very tricky, because you can have toxic friends, you know, and
Mhm.
sometimes you don't realize that this friend is toxic for you, right? Because a lot
Yeah.
of people think that toxic friendship looks like an evil person who's like kind of like mean girls, you know what I mean? But it's not
Yeah.
always like that. It's not that obvious. Sometimes it's just a simple, the simple way of how you realize how people react to your success,
Mhm.
or to the things that you want to succeed in life, and how they react to that, and how they're willing to support you, or you know what I mean, like being able to see that, and then being able to decide whether they're fit to be a part of your life. And so
Mm.
one of the most important things I want people to realize is you don't owe it to anybody for them to be in your life. Like,
Yeah.
you are not forced for anybody to be a part of your life. Like, even as a childhood friend or a coworker or maybe something that could create like tension or this um oh, it would be weird, because of our mutual friends or whatever. Like, you're not obligated to. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to have somebody in your life if you choose them not to be in your life. And I mean this in like a toxic way, right? So back to that point of like, if they're not willing to lift you up, if they're not willing to be there for you, then you don't need that. And
Mhm.
especially because that's actually very draining. That is going to shift your focus from probably all the great things or other things that life is going to throw at you, that it's just kind of going to consume you in that area. And I think several times in life I've been in situations where it's so hard to accept that a person's role in your life is not permanent, because sometimes you have this aspiration that you want a friendship to last forever, right?
Yeah.
But obviously as you grow, you change as a person. You're developing your mentality, who you are,
Mhm.
your maturity, um and you just kind of shift off in different directions, and it stinks in a way, because you wanted this to blossom and to continue, but when it does you no good,
Yeah.
you got to move on. And I know that's easier said than done, but this is my like encouragement to you, first of all, to analyze, like, is everyone that you have around you like a positive impact? And I'm not saying that, oh, so and so friend had a bad day and she was kind of mean to me, so I'm cutting her off. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like genuine like approval or disapproval of the things you do, right? Or
Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? So, you know, analyze that. Look around your surroundings and analyze who you have in your life and how it benefits you in a way, right? And I'm gonna turn the tables later on, but for now we're focusing on like others to you and who you
Mhm.
have. And it's important to have a supportive group. And this doesn't mean um excuse me, that you have to have like 100 people in your community, in your bubble. You don't need 100 people, and most of the time that just
Nope.
adds more drama. um just get a good selective few to that have proven or have shown to be a positive influence, or um
Yeah.
just honestly, sometimes all it takes is to have a friend that texts you and says, "Hey, I'm praying for you." That goes a million times farther than somebody who gives you like $5, or you know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's this well intention that has to come with
Mm.
it, and you can
Yeah.
genuine well intention. Like, you just can, like, you can tell when somebody truly is happy for you. And that's what you want. You want to know that as you continue to grow, that you have these people looking up and saying, like, I'm so happy for you. Like, I'm so glad that you are where you're at. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I really, 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 really want to stress, and I'm not saying this because we're starting our podcast or because this is something that we're doing. I'm not saying this for me, but it's because I've seen this a lot, especially on Instagram. Um, you do not have to buy somebody's product to support them. And I'm gonna let that sink in, because a lot of people think that because your friend or your sister or whoever it is decides to like start like their own like side hustle or whatever, you don't have to buy from them to show your support. Just
Sure.
the simple fact that you follow their page, that you like their stuff, that you comment, or even the simple fact that you text them and say, "Hey, like, kudos for you for starting it," or whatever it is, that is showing support. That doesn't necessarily have to be you buying from them. So
Yeah.
I think it's important for me to stress that, because it it also goes along with like somebody who decides to go out of their way to do something maybe out of their comfort zone and to get that love or to
Mhm.
feel that acknowledgement of, hey, you're happy for me, whether it's something I'm doing for you that benefits you directly or not. Just the simple fact that you're acknowledging me, acknowledging that it does take courage or it does take work to do what I'm deciding to do, that goes a long way. it
Mhm.
it makes a huge impact. One of the prime examples is actually whenever I was going on this whim of doing my movie, which we kind of mentioned in earlier episodes. That was crazy enough. I mean, I was in college by then, but was one of the, I want to say maybe the first or the most impactful realizations of people or the social media support, right? Because
Okay.
people have this idea that the more, or not the more, but like that everyone on your social media friends is there to see the best of you. There are people
Yeah.
who follow you because they simply are curious and probably don't want to be stalking you, so they're your friend and they're curious to see where your life is taking you or the things that you're accomplishing or the things that you are doing. That does not mean that they have your best interest in mind. It does not mean that they're excited for you when you do things. And so just because you have a big following does not mean that they're all going to be there when you lose it all. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Well,
when,
for some people,
go ahead.
sorry, for some people when they follow like someone that they like don't like, um, they use it as a way to kind of measure how much better they are than you instead of being like, hey, I'm supporting this person, I'm proud of this person. They're
Mhm.
more comparing themselves and they're like, okay, she's in this area of her life. I'm over here. I'm in one step further than her. I've done better than her in life than she has.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think towards that way.
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest dangers of social media is the comparison
Mm-hmm.
game. And I think that's also a topic for another day because
Yeah.
that is in itself is a lot. But just whenever when I had brought up this idea,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I had so many people in my mind that I thought were going to just like, I don't know, be like, "Oh, that's so cool," or you know what I mean? That, to be honest with you, completely ignored that entire project.
What?
Never once liked, never once mentioned it, never nothing. And that's when I quickly realized if I stay here and fixate on every individual person who didn't,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I'm going to lose the value of every person who did. And two, I'm going to discourage myself for what? Somebody who probably doesn't care about what I'm doing. Like it's not even worth it. So,
Yeah.
and that kind of, and I'm saying it because that kind of stuff comes a long way because honestly, if one of those people who truly showed that like that kind of like I'm going to humor you, Marilyn. You're going to do a movie, I'm going to humor you like that, who needed something versus somebody who didn't. And it's not a retaliation, but honestly, if it was a one for one comparison, I would go out of my way to help the person who did support me. Why? Because there's that emotional, that sentimental, like I appreciate you because
Mm-hmm.
in a moment where you didn't have to support me, you did, and so I'm gonna go out of my way to show my support back to you. You know what I mean? Kind of like a
Yeah.
giving back. Um, so that's the thing. Like surround yourself with people who do like I said, not they may not care on a day-to-day basis the stuff you post, but like beyond that social media platform, that they care about the person who you are, the actual
Yeah.
who you are, not the screen, not the camera, not the filter, but who you are internally, who you really are, and your success. Um, so that's that, and I could probably go on and on about that. But another thing I want to here's my other quote from her was everyone wants to ride with you in the limo, but what you want is someone who will take the bus with you when the limo breaks down. And
Mm.
that hits a little deeper, right? You want people who aren't in it for your success, who aren't in it for the money, who aren't in it to always get something in return. You want people who are, like I said, just who genuinely care about you. And again, you don't have to be buying everything from them. You don't have to be texting them every day. And I guess it is also different, right? Depends on your needs, but every friendship's a little different. But I guess for me, like, you don't have to text me every day. I don't need that. But just
Yeah.
the occasional, like I said, text or like catching up or whatever, that kind of stuff goes a long way, because it's kind of like, I understand you have a life, I understand you have priorities, I understand you have other stuff, but in the occasion where you have a chance to reach out, hey, I appreciate it. It's good to know, you know what I mean, that there's still that bond, that connection. And another quick thing I want to note is the time that you've known someone does not define the strength of the friendship, right? Because there are some people that
So
have
true.
this idea that if I've known you for like 20 years, then we're like this. And you
Hmm.
can meet someone within a year and be like this, you know? So again,
Hmm.
it goes back to kind of just like the bond and what, I don't know, like that, I guess, chemistry too, you know, like
Yeah.
what alignment in your life you have that kind of brings you closer. Um, but before I turn it around, like, I don't know if you have any personal experiences or anything you kind of wanted to chime in on that part.
No, I know what it's like to be like have that toxic friend, and I also know what it's like to end up being that toxic friend, even though I didn't realize it. And when me and that person ended our friendship, I didn't realize like how bad of a friend I was being until much later in my life, where I looked back, I was like, okay, she made the right call and like cutting that friendship off. I mean, I wasn't very happy about the way she did it.
Mm,
It was just like she ignored me. It was really like teenager stuff. I was like, this is dumb. And so
mm,
I think that's why I didn't recognize it initially, because I didn't like the way it was done to me.
mhm,
But like I can look back now and say, okay, that was the right thing to do. She should have ended that friendship, and I'm really glad she did, because I allowed her to grow.
mm,
And then for me, like honestly, it wasn't even that big of a deal,
mm,
which was kind of shows you like, okay, maybe I wasn't the best friend in that situation.
mhm,
But I've also been in that like friendship where no matter what you do, you're either never enough for that person, or that person is always like going to turn it around into a competition. Where
mm,
it's like, oh, well, I did this, and like, do you think I don't think you could do that or something, or they're like, oh, I got this new job, like, oh, well, I got this thing, and I've been doing this for like this long, and so they told me, I was like, okay, I get it, but like, but you also have to evaluate yourself, because you're not going to be always the greatest person. So
right.
it
Yeah, go ahead.
you have to be like look internally, like, okay, am I doing something that is damaging this friendship? Like, is there a way I can fix it, or should we just end this friendship completely?
Mhm,
Because it's kind of like you do with a plant. If you have like a dying leaf or whatever, you take off that leaf in order for your plant to grow, because that leaf is taking out nutrients and everything from the other leaves that are help like stunting its growth. And so once you prune that leaf and take that leaf out, the rest of your plant can grow.
mm.
So I tell
Exactly.
people.
And I'm glad you turned it to the other way around, because that's kind of where I was going with this as well. Is now, you know, you turn it around and now evaluate yourself. Like, what kind
Mm-hmm.
of friend are you? Like, you know, one of the most important things is just being intentional. I know that, and this is the crazy part. We do live in a society where we're on a routine, we're running around, we're super busy. And recently we've been hit with something that's almost slowed us down, like,
Mm-hmm.
forcefully. And so now there's, I know that things are still going on, and if anything there's like a different type of concern, but it has slowed things down in a sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so then there's that question, like, well, when you used time as an excuse, what's your excuse now?
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to come to terms with it. Is it this something, like you said, is this something that you're willing to put in time to nurture?
Mhm.
to develop, to grow. And I'm not talking about like day to day 24/7.
Yeah.
Because again, a true friend understands that you're not going to be like the number one on the top of the list, right? I mean, especially
Mhm.
if that person has a spouse, I would hope. But again, to each their own. um, so evaluate like what kind of friend are you, and if you feel again, every like two-way conversation is a little different, right? For example, like my friendship and your friendship is going to be different with my friendship with somebody else and my friendship with
Mhm.
somebody else, right? Every one of those connections is going to look
Yeah.
different. Why? Because who you are is different from the next friend, and that person is different from that friend, and that bond is also different because there are things that are going to connect us that is not going to connect me with the other person. Back to like that combo. So it's it, like I said, that's why it gets complicated when you have too many, because then
Mm.
you're like, oh, okay, then there's this, and then there's this person, and then this person doesn't work the same way, and you kind of want to use like a
Yeah.
size fits all, and that's just not the case. Let
Mm.
me break it to you, it doesn't work that way. So again, as a person, like, where are you in life and what are you willing to give for each friendship? And like you were mentioning, if that's not, if you can't give it your all, sometimes it is that hard decision of like, I unfortunately this is, and it's not to say that you'll never reconnect with them,
Yeah.
but sometimes there are phases in your life that you have to go through that doesn't include certain people, and that's just the way it works. Sometimes you need to grow differently, and then yeah, life brings you back together, and you reconnect, and you're better
Mhm.
for each other, you're better friends for each other. um and it's just so crazy. I feel like this whole friendship thing is a very difficult thing, and I feel like I've been in so many odd, um kind of like you said, like I've been in situations where I've realized that I haven't been such a great friend. And I feel like those are harder because it's easier again to point a finger and say, yeah, well, you're
Yeah.
not that great, versus you being the one to have to evaluate and say, wow, like that stinks. Like I wish that's not a title that I would like to
Yeah.
have, you know? Um, but again, then it's also what teaches you to grow for the next friendship.
Mhm.
Um, to reevaluate and say like, hey, if I appreciate this, why won't I do it in return, right?
Yeah.
Why do I expect something coming to me, that support and unconditional whatever, but I can't give it back because I don't have time or because I'm busy?
Mhm.
Then that's, in any relationship or friendship, it doesn't work that way. It's not
Yeah.
one way.
It's that thing where people are like, if it's actually important to you, you're gonna make time for it.
Hmm.
And so, like, and that doesn't say like every friendship you're gonna be constantly talking to them like 24/7. You'll never go a day without texting them. Like,
Hmm.
that's not how it goes. Like some friendships, it's every 6 months you text them, hey, miss you, hope you're doing well.
Hmm.
And even though that friendship, you're not constantly seeing that person, you're not texting that person, that friendship is still there. Like I have a friend who's like that who lives in Colorado where we don't see each other, we don't talk to each other that often, but like randomly we'll send each other like, hey, how you doing? Hope you're doing well and all this stuff. And that friendship, we're still really good friends,
Hmm.
but our friendship is different than the way me and you connect with each other because we're like obviously like now we see each other every weekend. But I used to see you more often, and then like when I was in college there was people I would see every single day. I like text them constantly, but now like again it's the same thing where I'm just like, oh hey, hope you're doing well. But and then so you have to recognize that your friendship with the person is going to change and develop over the years. It's not going to be stay consistent over time, but that doesn't mean your friendship is over.
Right.
It's just in a
and
different phase.
and sometimes what bonded you the most was that physical presence or
Mhm.
that closeness, and then let's say after college or high school, life takes you separate ways, and it's maybe not the same. It's hard to have that connection
Yeah.
virtually, or other things consume you and that just doesn't become a priority. And that's what I'm talking about. Then you just kind of drift off. And sometimes it's harder when you don't get closure, or in your mind you don't think, oh man, like that was it, like that kind of
Yeah.
wrapped up our time together. And those are the ones that are, I guess, harder to evaluate, because then it's not something happened, it's just life happened. And
Mhm.
I don't know, are we on good terms, are we on bad terms, did I become a bad friend because I stopped keeping in touch, you know what I mean? Like, then you have to figure out, like, it was this a natural, like, okay, we're each going our own way.
Yeah.
And you know kind of going back to the support, like, you like to receive it, but do you give it back? Now, I
Mm.
have a couple of high school friends that, I kid you not, I probably said just a few words to them, like in person, and then through college and stuff. And it's kind of one of those people, you add it on social media and you're like, okay, cool, we know each other, right? Or mutual
Yeah.
friends and stuff. But I will tell you that I think there's three of them that whenever I post something or they post something, like success wise, or something they're accomplishing or doing, we're like spot on like encouraging each other. And
Yeah.
it's great because I feel like our friendship is one of those like success, like social media friendships, because it's purely like very positive and optimistic, and crazy also to kind of realize, like, I honestly don't have like this I guess history, or this like very emotional tie to this person, like we haven't lived
Yeah.
life together. But yet when it comes to something that I decide to share, they're so like pumped about, like, oh, that's so great. And then then there's a comparison, then you realize there are people that have been in your life forever, and you just kind of like crickets on that end, and you're like, huh,
Mhm.
you know so it's just, again, it's a sense of, you have to evaluate and kind of figure out, like, of course, if that's kind of like the friendship where that's not a thing, then you can't go on, I'm gonna cut you off, because then you
Yeah.
would know that that's the understanding. But when it's people where you, again, like, where you, like, I guess, expected or kind of feel like, well, that's kind of what we built up, and you don't get that, then you're like, huh, then it makes you think and wonder, okay, well,
Yeah.
what's going on here? um
Yeah. Ooh, friendships are weird.
yeah, it is, but again, that's why I'm turning it on you too, like, this is kind of a way to evaluate, right? So who have you lost touch with? Like, who have you lost touch with and you feel like you need to reconnect with? Um Also, like, who do you think in your life needs that reminder of, like, oh, I need a little bit of Marilyn, or Carolina, or whoever's watching this, you know? Um Also, just a quick note, I don't know who needs to hear this, and I'm not calling anybody out in particular, but just because you're
It's okay.
family, like blood, does not mean that you don't have to reach out to your family member.
Yeah.
There is I know sometimes it gets lost that, oh, well, that's my brother, my sister, like they know I love them. But it's never too much to actually have your sibling reach out to you and say, hey, like, or like, if something's going on, or I'm praying for you, or whatever. Same goes
Yeah.
with cousins, and like, just depending how your family dynamic is, right? But
Yeah.
this is also that, like, I think it's easy to say, oh, that's family, like, duh, like, why would you question it? But I mean, we're all human, and sometimes you, if anything, more than a friend, you need that kind of outreach, and that kind of,
Mhm.
like, especially if, like, you don't live in the same household, like, that's obviously much more, because it's not like you see them on a day-to-day basis. But that's
Yeah.
also, like, again, a brother and sister can also be a friend, and we're talking about friendship, so this whole conversation applies to that as well. And even a father daughter, father son, son mother daughter, that whole thing too.
Dynamic.
Yeah, exactly. So just kind of like key takeaways. um Again, I'm just gonna go straight off of from her quote. Just surround yourself with only people who are gonna lift you higher. Like,
Mm.
you don't need negative people in your life. You don't need people who are always, like you said, trying to compete. You don't need people who are questioning you unless it's with good intentions, or it's a good,
Yeah.
like, devil's advocate kind of like, hey, just have you thought about this? But not somebody who's like, you really you want to
You
go?
think you can do that?
Hmm.
Yeah. There's that difference of being, hey, I'm like questioning you not because I don't think you're worthy, but because I want to make sure that this is something you thought through.
Hmm.
So, and but it not only puts like my mind at ease as a your friend, but
Hmm.
it puts your mind at ease too. He's like, okay, I thought about that, or you know what, I didn't think about that. I'm glad he brought that up.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, don't just because someone questions you, don't assume they're doing it out of malice. Is that the right word? Like they're doing it like to be mean. They're
Hmm.
doing it because they want to know that you're genuinely like committed to this thing. There's that right balance where you're like,
Yeah.
you're doing this because I'm concerned, not because I don't think you can do
Hmm.
it.
and and as well, again, we turn the tables, then evaluate yourself, um in the end, whoever you are, like, if there's somebody you've kind of left hanging, or somebody who hasn't gotten enough love from you, reach out to them. It doesn't hurt. I can promise you they're not going to get upset because you reached out to them. If anything, they're going to be like, wow, I haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah.
Or they might surprise you. Like, the best texts are when they say, wow, I really needed this, because
Hmm.
it's kind of like, well, the Lord sent me then, because here you
Yeah.
go.
I always think it's really sweet when you have that person who's like, hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but you've just been on my mind lately. Like I hope everything's going like great or whatever. And it's just like, huh, like that really makes like me feel good because sometimes it ends up being that person really needed someone to talk to, that person needed like those good like thoughts towards them or whatever. And it's just, you know, don't be afraid to let somebody know you're thinking about them
Yeah,
in a non creepy way.
right, right. And also, don't, very quick last minute thing, don't be that person who's like, well, the phone goes both ways. Like, okay, you're not a 3-year old. Like,
I did that one time.
yeah.
Yeah. Because somebody was like, well, how come you didn't text me or call me? I was like, look, the phone goes both ways. I didn't get a call from you. And then I was like, okay, that was kind of mean. But,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's understandable, of course. Like, si te reclaman, like, if they do, like, kind of throw it in your face, then I think
Yeah.
it's a fair point. But if it's kind of like, oh, I'm not going to reach out to them until they reach out to me, like, I'm
Hmm.
they do it, like, get over it, move on, just send them the message. And if you're going to be so petty about it, then maybe you don't need that friendship in your life. Like, maybe it's going to consume all of those, it's going to turn you into that person. Just go on with somebody.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have time for that, honestly. Like, we're all here, we're all experiencing different things. It's always going to be something. So you want people who are there for you, who are going to support you. You want to be that friend that supports people and is
Hmm.
there for people. And I mean, again, it's kind of like, do to others what you would want to be done to you. That's like a golden rule in life. So if you want a good friend, then be a good friend. So
Truth.
I think that's the best way to kind of leave you with that. I'll probably
Yeah.
quote, you know. Wait, dang it, what did I say?
If you want to be a good friend, no, if you want a good friend, be a good friend.
Something. I'll go back and play it through, and then I'll use that as our little quote thingy.
I'll pay attention, I promise. I just forgot.
It's okay. I forgot it myself, and I'm the one that said it. So, but yeah. Anyway, that's kind of like our light roast. It was maybe a little passive aggressive, on the sense of like, be a good friend, but
Yeah.
it's also very applicable, and it's necessary, and I hope this was the reminder you needed to just kind of, you know.
Send that text.
Mhm. Exactly. Or the phone call or the Zoom meeting. There's no
Yeah.
excuse. There is no excuse. You
Although,
literally just lay on
ask.
the couch. couch, huh?
Ask before you FaceTime or do a Zoom meeting. Don't ever just do it randomly.
Yes, that.
Especially if you haven't talked to that person in a while. It's just like, hey, what, you know,
Mm,
a little heads up.
that's true. That is true. There you go. Carolina helped you out. I was just
I like, yeah, I'm one of those people that like I have to have a like an appointment to like FaceTime me, call me, or do a Zoom meeting with. Text me all you want. I don't care.
that's true.
Just don't call me out of the blue because
Yeah,
I
that is
won't answer.
true. Okay, you're right. I'm giving terrible advice. Okay, just give people a heads up.
I mean, there's some people you can straight up call.
Yeah, and they'll be fine with it.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll let you guys go. And again, we hope this was as inspiring as it could be.
Yeah. Bye, guys.